Good evening. We call to order the regular meeting of the West Valley City Council. We note that we have 6 council members currently online. I believe Tom will join us in just a moment. So with that, as allowed by the Open and Public Meetings Act, West Valley City is authorized to conduct electronic meetings without an anchor location. This authorization is based on Salt Lake County status as a high transmission area for COVID-19 as determined by the Utah Department of Health. Electronic meetings allow full participation by elected officials, staff, and the public without increasing the transmission of COVID-19. And this determination will remain in effect for 30 days. And directions to participate in the council meetings are available either on the agenda where they can observe, and if they would like to participate or make comments during public comment times, they can contact the city and get permission and instructions to sign in so that they will be available to do so. With that then, we have, I haven't got my agenda up, but it's got to be the police video, I think. Well, let's see. There we go.
Bob Fitzgerald, West Valley City Fire Department here, and we are in week 5 of our recruit camp. And today is kind of a pinnacle day or a highlight day for not only the instructors but also the recruits. Today we are challenging them with a confidence course on SCBA and confined spaces and getting themselves out.
Feeling nervous. This is supposed to be kind of a mind trip, so let's do it.
Today we practice the May Day drill, which is a drill that we don't want any firefighter to actually have to call in real life. May Day is one of those incidents where the firefighter is in trouble and needs to call for assistance to get out.
Mayday, Mayday, Mayday.
So what we've got today is we've got the candidates following a hose line through a maze. And it's got a lot of different difficulties that they have to face and a lot of different things that they have to challenge and overcome. We've talked about entangling them before. This is kind of like we've really stepped up the game here, and so far the recruits have done very well. Fortunately, we were down here with our sister department, Lehigh Fire Department, where they've got this prop and have let us come down and use that. It's an exciting day for the recruits. Earlier today, we talked about May Days and listened to actually a couple of May Days so we can bring to home the importance of being safe, being prepared, and trying at all costs to avoid getting themselves into a situation where they have to call a May Day.
My name is James English. I'm with South Jordan Fire Department, and this is the end of week 5. Week 5 has been pretty good. The workouts have been brutal. We do a grinder every Thursday, and this week we had a lot of fire, and so all of us were pretty dead. So the grinder was hard this morning. But this week we worked on some of our firefighter survival stuff, and we did a lot of fire. On Tuesday we had maybe 6 fires, which is a lot. And we were working pretty hard and sweating a lot. Just put your head down and go. I mean, they tell us what we want. They've trained us to know what to do, and we just give it our all. Work as a team. You sweat a lot, you drink a lot, you sweat a lot, you hump a lot of hose. When I was younger, something happened to a family member and we were freaking out, and the fire department came up and saved the day, and they looked pretty calm and cool, and they made me feel comfortable that my family member was going to be okay. And ever since then, sealed the deal. Well, the brotherhood that I'm developing with these guys, we've got a girl in here too. She's right there with us. She's kicking our butt. But that's the biggest thing. This is turning into a big family, and we've all got each other's back. You know, the cadre here with West Valley has been absolutely impeccable. They've shown us a lot of leadership. They've given us a lot to digest in the past 5 weeks. But I feel like we're hanging in there. We're doing pretty good. We're all working with each other, as I said, and we're getting things done.
Keys to conquering this course is keeping your composure and also monitoring and managing your breathing. They have 4,500 psi in an air tank that is on their back, and that is supposed to last for a while. But when you're working hard, the breathing increases and the time on that tank decreases. And so it's very important that they really watch their air management and control that so that they can get through that. Anytime a firefighter gets lost or disoriented, or if something collapses on them or they're tangled up, that is when we want them to be ready to overcome those things. So that's some of the key components that we're focusing on today.
Man, the stress in there gets your heart rate up. So how tired am I right now? 1 to 10, I'm a 50.
So this is concluding of week 5 of our camp. Only 3 weeks left after this. So they've made great progress. You know, each and every week we've made good progress. There is still an awful long ways to go. You have to really, really push these young individuals to their limits to make sure that they are ready to hit the floors and serve the public.
Well, that was interesting. It was the fire department again. Okay, then the approval of our minutes of October 13th.
Move for approval of the minutes. Second.
Okay, properly before us. Any comments? Hearing none. Without objection, the minutes will be approved. And hearing no objections, I'll rule that it passed unanimously. Okay. Next on our agenda, we have a proclamation recognizing the month of October 2020 as National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And I will read the various statements on there. This is one that we have supported and participated on a regular basis. The month of October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We ask that those who are survivors and victims of domestic violence, homicides, be remembered. The lives of women, men, children, extended family, and communities continue to be negatively impacted by domestic violence. The crime of domestic violence is not confined to any group or groups of people, but cross all racial and socioeconomic segments of our society. Domestic violence hurts everyone. We as a community must recognize the scope of this social problem and work together to create a community which does not tolerate domestic violence. It is up to us as a community to teach our children and to expand the awareness of domestic violence by education, prevention, and outreach. We encourage all West Valley residents to take a stand against domestic violence in their personal relationships and in their community. Now, therefore, we, the Mayor and City Council of West Valley City, Utah, do hereby proclaim and recognize October 2020 as National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Thank you. Then Next, we have our public comment period. This is not for those who are to speak on the application on property on 5600 West. These are the general comments. And so, Nicole, how many do we have for general comments?
For general comments, we have 2.
Okay, and they've both been here before?
One of them has not, sir.
Okay. Were you able to communicate to them the 5-minute rule and no discussion, question and answer?
That information is all posted on the login sign up sheet.
Okay. Well, then let's bring the first one on.
The first one is Jim Visock.
Okay.
Good evening. I almost said good morning. It's good to see you all again. I listened into the study meeting and I'm all for the stormwater bill going up. And I think it should be a tiered increase, starting with at the $2, do it over a 5-year to get it up to $4. That will get the projects done a lot quicker. And we had an incident in our neighborhood where one of the drains collapsed and we had a huge hole in the middle of our street. And so we're going to see more and more of this if the information they're giving us with that old style, they don't get fixed. And so the money's got to come from somewhere. And since it hasn't been raised in, what was it, 2005, 7, whatever it was, that's a long time. So as a citizen, I think it's a good idea. And once again, I would support the tier thing. Other than that, stay safe, stay strong. That's all I have.
Thank you.
The next person we have is Deborah Guttrell. Deborah, you should be able to unmute your microphone now.
Thank you, Nicole. So it's Gatrell, it's the long A. I'm Deborah Gatrell. I'm running for Salt Lake County Council District 2. It's the west side of the valley. I've spoken with many of you over the summer and fall, but several of you I have not. So I just wanted to make the formal introduction to the full council. As far as the resume and background, I am a teacher at Hunter High School. I've been at Hunter for 6 years and I've been teaching in West Valley for 12. Guard. I've got 21 years of service. I'm a Black Hawk pilot. I've been deployed to the Middle East. And I'm also trained in military intelligence, which is where I'm assigned now. Those are very valuable skills. I also have, 2 years of experience at the state headquarters working on disaster response planning, which was focused on an earthquake scenario. Of course, we've since had the earthquake in Magna, and I just live half a mile from Magna myself. So that is a day to be remembered for all of us. Under the coffee table twice that day. Good times. I'm very much a problem solver. I'm a moderate. I'm not interested in scoring partisan points, but bringing the skill set that I have to the county council to help us navigate this very interesting time and the challenges that we face. I was not planning on this. I had thought maybe state school board in a couple of years. This is not something that I had aspired to, but recognizing with my historical perspective as the pandemic developed, that it was going to get bad. Of course, I saw once the NBA shut down that we would probably shut down schools and told the kids so. And of course that happened. Recognize also with the economic fallout that if we don't get this response right at every level of government, we have the real potential of facing another Great Depression, which would be horrendous for everybody. And I don't want to see that. So between the historical perspective and my military training skills and experience, I'm good under pressure, I'm a good problem solver, and I'm very good at bringing people together to the table to get things done that need to be done. So I am looking forward to serving in this new way at this time where I just recognize that I needed to step up and take on a new role. So I encourage you all to vote if you haven't yet. I expect most of you have, I know I have. It's an interesting year, this 2020, and I look forward to good things to come because we're done with the bad. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I assume there's no one else, Nicole?
No one for the general public comment period, sir.
Okay, then to our city manager, any comments?
No, Mayor, thank you. No comments tonight.
Okay. City council members, any comments? Okay, hearing none, then we'll go to our public hearing. This is on application Z-6-2020, filed by D.R. Horton. It's a zone change from agricultural to multiple unit dwelling. And to R110 and to commercial C2. So we'll deal with ordinance 2045 in conjunction with this, which is the change of zone, and then resolution 20-165 for a development agreement. This is on property that is located on 5600 West. It is just north of 4700 South, north of the railroad tracks, south of the subdivision there, a triangular piece of property. And let's see if I can get my computer to. And so let's see, I believe that there's 11 acres there, be a 98 unit, 2-story townhome development on 8 acres and a 4-lot subdivision on just under 2 acres. That will connect with the subdivision to the north. And then just over a 1 acre parcel for a commercial pad on the southeast corner. And let's see, these meet all the requirements of our this type of development. 2-car garage, 2 spaces in front, actually is a little extra. So that's the issue before us for those 98 units, 4 homes and commercial pad to be developed. Excuse me. With that introduction, then I will open the public hearing portion of this, unless council members, anything you want to add on comments on that? Okay. I believe we do have some people who want to speak to this. So we will open that up. And Nicole, if you'll just introduce one.
The first person is Pamela Bryson.
Okay.
Pamela, your microphone should be able to be unmuted now.
Okay, can you hear me? Are you able? Okay. I'm not too great with Zoom. Mayor Bigelow and the West Valley City Council, I'm here tonight as a concerned citizen and neighboring property owner directly north bordering the zone in question. I appreciate you hearing us tonight. I'm not trying to infringe on anyone else and their property rights. By trade, I'm a U.S. history teacher, and I believe in civic engagement and the importance of being involved in the process and not complaining later. So it's really important, I think, to be involved. I understand that you want our input, and also that sometimes that what one person does on their property can affect the worth, enjoyment, and even safety of those around them. In turn, sometimes citizens may leave a city, and if the city does not protect their rights, safety, and well-being. I believe that is why you are seeking our input. Please listen as if this development were going in your own backyard. My concerns with this development and its zoning are as listed. I've also included some pictures, so I hope that they're available to you on your email. I've done some research. I am not currently teaching, so I have a little bit of time on my hands to do some of this stuff. So my concerns first is zoning. I know that the zoning part of this is very important, that it can greatly affect what will happen in our backyard. That the zoning is the most important part of the process. Once the zoning is done, we don't have a whole lot of say of what can happen back there. So that's why this process is so important. Zoning, my first preference in this space would be for the city to consider a park or a green space. There is no large green space for quite some distance for residents to the east of 5600, and the park that is currently in our neighborhood is quite frequently overrun with high school students that threaten both adults and children. I think the residents to the east and in our neighborhood benefit from a park with fields and kids play space that is further from the high school. I know that this has a plan for a play space, and DR Horton does address that, but he only addresses that for the residents in that space, not for those who are nearby. Zoning, also, if a park is not possible, I must expressly and boldly speak that I would expect the city council to maintain and continue the same or larger size housing to what is currently in the neighborhood. Please consider RE zoning instead of RM. If single family housing were built, the train tracks would offer a nice buffer for the commercial on the other side. Does there really need to be townhomes to create a buffer as stated in the DR Horton letter? Third, on zoning. I have looked at similar buildings nearby and I'm concerned with the zoning which is being applied for in this area. Just down the road, there are units of greater size and they are not zoned with such high density. They are 10 units per acre and a R1-14 zone. They feel extremely crowded when I drive through them. I have a hard time believing that the rendering here with these 98 townhomes will still allow for the amount of green space shown, or it just will be a lot smaller than it looks on paper. I believe the green space will be the first thing to go, or it will be very small. There are many older condo complexes that have much better green space than these do. I've driven around in Kearns, in Taylorsville, in West Valley, and I'm concerned with the decreasing of the green space and the intensity of the building space. Fourth, no commercial. I heard you guys talking or discussing in the meeting, in the planning meeting, that you might want to have commercial space or a manufacturing plant or something like that. I just feel like that's even scarier. So I'm willing to be accepting of more residential than I would like to avoid manufacturing. That to me sounds horrible for my children behind my house. I just feel like the density is, anyway, I'm going to continue on. 20-foot buffer zone. In the meeting we had in, I think it was July or August, with the zoning, we discussed a 20-foot buffer zone between the neighborhood on the north and the development. And originally it looked to be about 5-foot space between the wall at my house and the wall of one of the residential buildings, and that was way too close. I'm just hoping that will be honored, that the discussion of moving it back 20 feet will be honored as it was discussed in the meeting. And the reason why that's important to me, I'm concerned for my children's privacy and the buildings that will overlook them. I also have a garden and I recently invested in solar, and I want to be sure that the development will not make it difficult for my solar panels, which were very expensive. I invested before I got the letter from you guys. And I also have a garden that needs the light to grow. So it's kind of important that there isn't a ton of big buildings right up next to my property. Nowhere in the letter does DR Horton address the current residents' well-being. I've read through most of his letters, and it was astounding to me that there's very little that addresses the current residents. It's mostly about future residents. My next concern, 12 residents per acre is too high. Down the road, there's a similar townhome situation, and there is a 10 per acre, and they are not even zoned at RM. RM zoning is too high for being right next to a family residential neighborhood that will share a boundary that is that close to the buildings. Other similar buildings have much more space between the other similar complexes have much more space between the buildings and the backyards of previous residents. Please take a look at the pictures I've provided you in regards to the enforcement of storage in garages. So I went on a little drive to see what DR Horton's buildings actually look like. And In regards to enforcement of storage in the garage, so in the meeting in July, the zoning meeting, the DR Horton representative was not exactly, he was a little dismissive of our needs as residents. He wasn't very, from my perspective, wasn't very concerned with our personal connection with this. And he said that there would be no problem with parking because they wouldn't be allowed to store things in their garages. And it was laughed at in the meeting for the fact that, can you really enforce that? How can you enforce in an HOA that people can't store things in their garages? So I went on a little drive and I visited a site where a DR Horton development is currently in development in Lehigh. I researched to find the same type of building as is planned for the property neighboring my home in the south. I drove to see it for myself. This is what I found when I was driving by. To be clear, I currently store things in my own garage, and I think a person ought to be able to do so. This just shows how unenforceable the suggestion of the developer is. There is also apparently no planned place for the garage cans, but in the garage. See, if you look at the pictures below, I took pictures of the full scope of the residence. Notice that there's stuff in the garage and there's also garbage cans. So I just feel like I don't know how they could enforce that would be a 2-space parking space in the garage. Those who are moved into those recently built residents are not being enforced if that's what they expect. And so that's a concern for me regarding the parking, and I'll address more of the parking later. I feel like the size is too small and there's just too many. So this is a new topic. These are planned to be 1,400 square feet. I believe and have experienced myself living in a community with this size condo being highly transitional. I am proposing that at least half or all of these condos should have a basement so that the residents have room to grow and stay in our community a little longer. Traditional housing has a tendency to lead to these kind of properties being purchased by investors and turned into rental properties. This would then make this area like a glorified apartment complex, which I believe in the study session was addressed by Ms. Lang, becoming, she said, in 20 years down the road, a nightmare in about 20 years when it becomes a fox shadow. I don't know if I got that correct, Ms. Lang, and I'm apologetic if I got it wrong. Many of you may not be in the city council then, 20 years down the road, but we likely will still be here. I propose that they need to have most of them with an unfinished basement to increase the probability of longevity of the residents staying here in our neighborhood. Along with longevity, we are also concerned with the probability of rentals that the crime rate may also go up along with a decreased property value. So I took some pictures. These are also in the pictures. There are some condos on 5400 South and 5600 West, right next to McDonald's. The basements give an additional square footage, storage, and increase the value of the property. The developer said they would have to do it further off the ground, but these have a basement and it is near ground level, which does not add to the height of the building, which is one of our concerns. These also seem to have more curb appeal and a longer lasting appeal in general. So I've given you some images to compare the renderings of our planned development and the ones that are down the street from us. If you look carefully, you can see the window wells in those images. This is a fairly good example of how building on a hill adds height. So it's important to keep them from getting too tall, as the hill will add height naturally. We are on the downward slope of this property over here. And so 2 stories, I super appreciate them being 2 stories and not 3 or 4 like some of the condos are. And so I want you to know, like, I guess I would rather them be this size than some bigger development coming down, you know, from other large condo developments. So I support them in the fact that I would prefer this over other things. So additionally, I personally have lived in a condo complex that has some basements and others do not. So I lived in a condo complex in West Jordan where they had about a third to half of them had basements and others did not. That led to a little bit of transitional condos. They're in the packet of photos I showed you. But it also led to longer residents staying in the area. So I don't know how if it's possible for you guys to even ask that of the developer, but it would be nice. And maybe if the developer's listening, it would be nice to help with our being supportive of your development. Next, parking space. With the 1,400 square feet, I'm concerned that the residents may use garage for storage, which is understandable, and use the 18 feet of parking space slab to park on. This would then mean there is not going to be room for residents to have guest parking in their slab of driveway. This is concerning to me because the closest parking space that is really a legit parking space is on my street. Right around the corner in the neighborhood on Cape Vista Way. You can't park on 56th. If people park across the street in the commercial across the street, you're gonna have people crossing a busy 56th with no crossing for a great distance. So there's no, crosswalks and such. And so this is concerning me because I have seen and lived in many townhomes, apartments, and condo complexes. It is true at the development on 56th and 54th. It is true on the condos, apartments right by Winco. All of these have a large amount of cars parking on the streets to make up for the lack of parking in the planning design. I'm pretty certain the businesses will not want them in their parking spaces, and by right may be able to block them and tow them. This design has a serious lack of parking and could be improved by removing the amount of buildings and not green space. Can this be scaled back to 50 to 60 residents instead of 98? So that there will be a decent amount of parking. So I included in my packet some pictures of the parking issues I saw on 54th and 56th by the McDonald's. The parking is always an issue. I asked the residents and they say the road coming in is always filled with cars and very full in the evening. This is why I'm concerned for our parking overflowing into the neighborhood, because that really is the only place for parking to go once the overflow parking for 98 condos is full. So that's those are some of the images. Some of the images are in the middle of the day, and so it's not as full, but the residents assured me that it fills up very much so at night. My next concern is water. This is not really a concern of my own, but one of the neighbors in my neighborhood, as I've been canvassing the neighborhood and talking with people about their concerns. We are concerned with the high density housing that there will be a decrease in water pressure. Some residents on the street already experience this, and we are concerned that this high number of residents, that there will be a significant drop in water pressure. This affects the look of the property, the properties that are already here, and the ability to be watered well. This needs to be addressed with the density and not when our water is struggling 2 years from now. So I don't want it to be an issue down the road and then have to fight for 2 years to get it fixed. Right-of-ways. I have a concern with right-of-ways. Alongside, so we're in electric and water, we have concerns about the right-of-ways that may be required for this community to get constructed. I've asked Steve Pastoric, but he said that that has not been determined yet, but I feel that it is an important part of making the decision to have a zone designation change. What will it take to get a space this big, and how will it affect the current residents' homes and yards? That may need to be removed, and will there be an equitable or better replacement? An example, we have a sturdy cinder block wall, and will that need to be removed for this project to go forth? From what I can tell, it is on our property, but I would like to be assured of it being kept on my property. I have lived that nightmare before as a child. My yard was taken out in order for condos to be built in my backyard as a child in the 90s in Orem, Utah. Back in the day, Orem was vineyards, and it's not so much anymore. And I experienced the builder was ruthless to my parents, and it was a fight to keep trees and other important parts of our yard once the zoning was changed. The zoning is huge, and we really didn't have a chance once the zoning was changed. The last thing I want to address is fire safety. I'm concerned with one very small entrance and 98 homes and a business access. One entrance doesn't seem like enough to ensure the safety of 98 homes and 400 residents. 400 residents, assuming that there's 4 people per unit. What is the plan during a fire? Also, I'm concerned because those buildings are so close to our property on the north side, and hopefully the 20-foot barrier would help with reassuring our fire safety if there was one. I appreciate your listening to my concerns as a citizen that is directly affected by the development and the rezoning of the property. Please consider us, the residents, as D.R. Horton hasn't been very considerate in some of his letters or their letters. Do you have any questions for me?
No, I don't hear any questions, so thank you very much.
I know that, did the images help with seeing some
We
of the
were-
issues?
We were just, some of us were a little slow getting them up. I know I was one of those, but I did get them up and able to look at them. And that
Okay,
was helpful.
I hope that they help with being able to see comparables. I've tried to do some research even outside of our own city, just so we could maybe have the best thing possible for us next to us. I know something's going to go in there that's out of our control, but I just wanted to see if, you know, I could do my best to help our community. Thank you.
All right, Nicole, next.
Next, we have Kiersey Driscoll. Kiersey, you should be able to go ahead and unmute your microphone at this point.
Thank you. Hopefully that worked all right. Thanks for listening to us today, Mayor Bigelow. We really appreciate the opportunity we have to voice some of our concerns. I just wanted to add my voice to everything that Pamela said. She has done amazing research and looking into this, and I can speak for her concerns being echoed by most of the people I know of in the neighborhood. I've actually been a resident of West Valley for over 15 years. I grew up in Europe, so I am very accustomed to high density housing and what makes that kind of housing successful. I've walked my dog 2 miles per day in that area, walking around the particular property in question. And so I'm very supportive of developing in this area. It would be nice to have something there besides the empty barren fields. My primary concerns right now after the adjustments that have been made is that the level of density here, and just as Pamela brought up, the lack of green space and parking, even though it's within our typical code, I think there are some reasons why this particular property has some extra concerns with it. Mostly that we are sandwiched between the high school and the USANA amphitheater. And we already currently, as Pamela alluded to, we already currently have quite a lot of issues because of the high school being so close to one of the major inlets to our neighborhood. And I travel that area twice a day, going to work and coming to work, or coming from work when not in quarantine. And it's very difficult to get out of our neighborhood as is with the traffic issues from the high school. And oftentimes that traffic is backed up way past the 4700 intersection. And so I do definitely have some concerns about adding to that traffic without any kind of adjustment for the increase of cars in that area. And the parking with USANA currently, when they have certain events, it does back up all the way into our neighborhood as is now. And so I would anticipate that this neighborhood would be even more affected by those traffic issues. And I think that, again, while I support developing this area, I think just having a slightly less density in this housing would really speak to the issues of the policing that we have from high school students coming through. I don't know if it's been brought up to you yet, but we've had a shooting in that park multiple times since I've lived here. So I usually my cameras are used to try to identify what's going on. When the police officer was shot, when a kid was shot down there, when there's just a lot of crime because of our proximity to the high school. And so I would really like to see that not made worse by having this other haven for them to go to, without having it at least be open enough that it would be easy to police. And I think that's pretty much all of the concerns that I wanted to bring up. I do think that more green space, more visibility, and larger housing here, I feel like there should be a way to meet the needs of the neighborhood, the unique needs of this neighborhood, and also still allow for the development that would make that area of our city better and more usable. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Nicole, next.
Next, we have Andres Gonzalez. Andres, you should go ahead and be able to unmute your microphone.
I think it's unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Forgive me for being a little personal, but I think it would at least help in understanding where I'm coming from. I just recently moved into this area. My wife unexpectedly passed away a little over 2 years ago, and I have an unmarried daughter, a 30-year-old daughter, who both her and I decided to move to Utah. So about a little over 2 years ago, we moved back to Utah here. We rented for a couple of years, and then just 2 months ago, I purchased a property on Cape Vista Way. This is a property that is adjacent to this vacant lot. And so my backyard is immediately adjacent to the lot that we're discussing. Now, let me just read to you what the appraiser wrote in the appraisal that I used as part of our decision on whether to purchase this house. The appraiser said that he had talked to a Mr. Steve Lehman of WVC. I don't know what that is. Perhaps one of you might know who that is or what WVC is. But this is what it said. It said, quote, "At this time, no plans for development have been confirmed or approved, and it's regarding the property in my backyard." So as of June, somebody from this organization, WVC, informed the appraiser that there was nothing being planned for development in this property. Now, when I moved in here and found out that there indeed has been something planned, and in fact, it's a multi-family condo type arrangement over 1 story, then I got very concerned. Because to be honest with you, one of the biggest selling points of this house was the privacy. Now, I recognize that a vacant lot is going to be developed at some point. I recognize that, that's obvious. But if you will notice that on this side of 5600, it's all residential. And so the idea that there's going to be some kind of commercial building on this side that's adjacent to this property is very disturbing to me. It should still be residential, just like what is on this side from the high school all the way down to where I live. And so I'm very concerned about the type of development that is planned. I recognize that development is necessary and I want that, but I want a neighborhood that is conducive and in the same style as the neighborhood that I just purchased. And I would, if more than 1-story buildings are erected in my backyard, I'm going to be very upset. There's residential housing here. Why can't that area be developed as single family dwellings, just like the residential area that we're in, instead of having a 2 or 3 story, condos where the density is real high. So basically, I just wanted to express my concern and my utter disappointment that the possibility is going to be some commercial and some high-rise development in my backyard. And I recognize that the zoning board and the city council are the ones that are responsible for this, for approving it or for ensuring that we maintain the kind of neighborhood that we have here right now, and the kind of neighborhood that I wanted to be in. And so I just purchased. So I really urge the council to be careful in what they approve. And I plead with you folks, please don't let developers come in and build whatever they. I recognize that developers want to maximize their profit and have a lot of units so they can sell, but please, please, council members, do not destroy what we have here. That's what I purchased. I hope it will stay the same. Please. I also want to comment in closing. I also was surprised at the low water pressure that was in this house. When we walked through this house to inspect it, I turned on the water and I noticed that the water seemed to be good. But now that I've been living in here, I've noticed that the water pressure is very low from other areas in which I have lived. So please, I really ask the council to be very careful in how they zone that property in our backyard and only allow single family or one-story dwellings to be built there. And by all means, no commercial property on this side of 5600. That's the extent of what I wanted to say. Thank you for your time, council members. And those are my comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nicole?
Next, we have Ken Johnson. Ken, you should be able to unmute your microphone now.
Very good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mayor Bigelow and council members. I've heard the other comments from my neighbors and endorse those, and I will try not to duplicate anything there. But our situation is kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum from Mr. Gonzalez, who just spoke. We've lived here in this house, and I live at 5613 West Cape Vista Way, which is the street immediately north of the property in question. It is on the very east end of that street, with my backyard just over the fence from this field. And the east side of my house is right on 5600 West. And we've lived here for 23 years, 23 and a half years, that is. And we have seen this area develop and change from basically where 5600 West, as it went south from our house, was a 2-lane road with just kind of narrow shoulders, and it went on down to the south, and now it's 4 lanes all the way, all the way as far as you can see, and with a turning lane in the middle of it, sidewalks, gutters, and everything. There were no businesses on the east side of 5600 West, where currently you have a tire shop and Abs and other businesses over there, storage place. And so it was basically our residential neighborhood on the west side and open fields, zoned for agriculture. And even if you go down where they plan to build the single family units, I think there are 4 on the current plan, a stub road from our neighborhood that would apparently go to the south into this lot that's in question. So you can understand why people like us, or people like Mr. Gonzalez, who recently moved in, would expect that they're going to expand to the south and have single family homes, have a neighborhood similar to ours. Now, it was zoned to agriculture. It's been that way. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I expected that a parcel on such a large artery 5600 West would always remain that way. And so it's I'm not going to pretend that that's what I expect, although I kind of like it. There's a little more space, but I certainly don't blame the DeFay family for wanting to sell and develop that land. But to go from an agriculturally zoned parcel to commercial, potentially commercial, even this application is for part of it to be commercial, but to such high density housing is such a swing in the opposite direction and contrary to the expectations of all of us neighborhoods, or most of us. Is quite a difference. I would say we're not opposed to the development. We're not opposed to it being residential, but the density is one major concern for many of the reasons that have already been addressed. I watched the video recording of the study meeting that you held a week or two ago. I share many of the concerns that were brought up by those members of the council who expressed them. Whether it's better suited for commercial, the noise of the trains that go by on the railroads, that is very real. You will get complaints about that. Certainly I can hear it at night when the train goes by in the middle of the night, and I'm probably 300 yards away from the track. The concerns about parking, the narrowness of the streets, the cars that will likely clog the streets. I mean, I think any of us can say that if you go to any of these other developments that are similar to this one that have been put in, even single family homes that are high density, you feel like you have to do a slalom course driving down the road because everybody's parked out on the street, or driveways are full, streets have cars lining the streets. Sometimes people are parked on lawns. It gets to be a serious problem. So I share many of those concerns, and not convinced that they are going to be resolved through a homeowners association or enforcement that happens there. I must say, looking back over the last 23 years, the traffic on 5600 West is significantly higher. I think the most recent traffic study, in looking at the planning documents that were made available several weeks ago, I think the last one was done in 2017, maybe 2018. Even since then, it has become much more congested. It's sometimes you have to wait several minutes to pull out of the neighborhood onto my street to go north on 5600 West, making a left turn there. So adding 90, close to 100 new units there with one outlet onto 5600 West is going to greatly increase the traffic in the immediate area. So just in summary, I think that I would ask the city council to consider alternatives to the high density plan that has been presented by the developer and by the family. I again don't blame them for wanting to develop it. I'm not necessarily opposed to some development or that it be, and would probably prefer that it be a residential. That's really what we expected. And just looking at the video from the city council members that I can see on this meeting, it appears that most, if not all of you, are at home, and just maybe you can look out your back window and picture what it would be like to have 30-foot high buildings back there just feet from your fence when that suddenly appear after you have lived there for 20 plus years, and ask you to consider alternative plans that will benefit everybody. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicole, was there one more?
We have two more.
Two more.
Jim Visock, you are good to speak.
Good evening again, Mayor and City Council. I appreciate the four that have spoke before. Ms. Bryson, Well done job. Normally, I'm for more housing in West Valley. We need it. But you can see which way I'm going. On this area, putting this many houses in such a small place, high density housing, townhomes, whatever you want to call it, wrong space, wrong place, and wrong area. I hope you guys do the right thing for the people in the neighborhoods and in that area and take the appropriate actions and don't let this go past. I won't reiterate what's already gone on. But once again, I appreciate the people that have spoke before for speaking up. As a regular person that speaks up and speaks out, hopefully they'll continue to stay involved. That's all I have.
Thank you. Nicole?
The last person is David Lewis. He is the applicant. And David, you should be able to unmute your microphone now.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Council and Mayor. I appreciate the time that you have to be here. I also appreciate the residents. I want to just iterate that although we may have differences in opinion on what should go here, I definitely care very much about my comments, about your feelings, and appreciate you speaking up. I also thank you to the council. I didn't realize before I got in real estate how much time you spend reviewing plans and going to meetings and everything. You do a lot of sacrifice, so thank you. Mayor, that I included you with the council in that. You're appreciated. I wanted to ask if you would like to discuss and then have me speak, or if you would like me to address some of the comments that some of the residents have, and then you could ask me questions later. How would you like me to be able to proceed?
Generally, the time is yours to speak. If we have questions or whatever later, we can follow up on those. But this is your time to speak.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Mayor. So I'll just start, I guess, with some of the comments that have been raised tonight. Reiterating to Ms. Pamela, we absolutely are going to be honoring the 20-foot setback. And we did that without any hesitation to help in listening to the concerns. We're very excited about the project. We think that we've hired one of the best land planners here in Utah and site designers to come up with a plan that flows, that has an emphasis on space, and in that open space. I mean, we've had the fire chief take a look at this and make sure that it works for them, that they're satisfied with it. And the open space has been designed with policing in mind. It's centrally located to create more of a community center. It's very open, and that should be a great deterrent to anything that might be going on that you wouldn't want going on. The 4 single family homes was put and designed to create more flow of single family and also reduce any traffic that might be going north. I know that Steve Historic is going to be speaking to that more in his presentation, but we've tried really hard to create a very livable and nice community. Almost a 3/4 of an acre open space contiguous in the middle of a development. That's a big deal, and that's hard to do. And you can site plan that it's going to be kind of the main area for residents to be able to be. There's been a lot of comments about parking. We have a professional HOA management that takes care of all of our communities. Once we hand the HOA over to the residents, they can choose to continue with them. They will make sure that there aren't issues with cluttered garages and cars overflowing in the street. There's going to be no parking on the streets. And so there's 2 cars for every garage. There's 2 cars for every driveway. That's more than double what's asked in the city. And then we went, because we wanted to create a desirable community, to put additional spaces. When people come over to my place, parents or family or friends, we typically don't have more than 4 vehicles. And even if we do, we don't have more than 5. So that's just an example of how we have tried to create a very nice, well thought out, well designed community. And Mayor, that's those are my comments to what's been stated today. And I imagine we'll have a little bit more discussion as the council talks. And I'm not sure if you would like me to address right now the 2 differences in the development agreement. I can either address that now, or we could address it once you come up to it. The only change that we have, or that we're asked for, is the type of fencing along the railroad. So I can either discuss that now, or we can get to it a little bit later.
Well, why don't you address it now? Because once we close the public comment portion, the only additional comments would be allowed is if a council member has a specific question for you.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Nicole, I don't know if I'm able to share my screen. Is that?
No, you are just an attendee, and only panelists are able to do that. So you're only
Okay.
able to speak.
I will do my best, council members, to illustratively speak so that hopefully you can envision what I'm trying. There's a little bit of a slope that going from west to east. We are going to be grading that slope out. The Planning Commission had recommended that a 6-foot masonry wall be placed along the property line, along the railroad. We are asking that it be a chain link fence for the following reasons. If you were to put a masonry wall along there is a visibility constraint that is caused where people in the homes cannot see what's happening on the other side of that wall. Whether it's a child that is on that side headed towards the train tracks, whether there's something undesirable happening over there, or whether there's graffiti, you can't see that. Whereas with chain link, and even if you wanted the chain link with the slats in there so that there's limited visibility, we'd be okay with that. But for the safety and visibility, that's one of the main things. Another reason is you can't tag or place graffiti on a chain link fence. And if you go across the tracks, unfortunately, there's some on some of the storage units, and it's just a sad fact that some people are a little disrespectful of property, and this wall would be the property and under the responsibility of the HOA, and we feel that it would be an undue and unnecessary burden for them to have to always be going out and painting over it and trying to maintain the wall. Whereas with the chain link fence, that wouldn't be a problem. Excuse me. The last thing is one of the main reasons that the masonry wall was desired was a view into the city. And this is where I really wish I had the diagram to show you, but the slope extends beyond our property line, approximately 4 feet-ish in height. The masonry wall is going to be 6 feet. That means that there would only be around a 2-foot visible section of the wall above the dirt berm. The dirt effectively will invalidate being able to see that masonry wall and just create a more conducive environment to all the other issues or concerns that we have being brought up with the safety, with the tagging. You just won't be able to see the wall very well unless you're looking directly parallel down the tracks line. I hope that I was able to speak eloquently enough that you could envision what we're saying. But that is why we are petitioning to have the chain link fence rather than the masonry wall. Are there any questions with that? Did I speak okay?
I would just like a clarification. This is on the side by the railroad, and the slope goes down from west to east. Is that correct?
Correct. It's a southwest to a northeast direction, but I just had spoke it from west to east. So you're
right.
correct.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yes.
Okay.
That is correct.
Thank you.
You bet. Just to make sure it's clear, we're not asking for a change along 5600. We're fine putting up that masonry wall there. This is only along the railroad that we're petitioning this.
Okay, did that include your
sir.
comments? Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm used to being face to face. Yes, that concludes our comments.
All right. Yes. Sorry for the unusual situation, but electronic, especially given the number of cases being recorded right now and reported, we kind of stick with the electronic for the time being. Okay. So Nicole, that's everyone that was to speak to this?
Yes, sir. That was everyone.
Okay. Then we'll close that and bring it back to the council. But if you have questions of anyone who spoke, we'll certainly work through that and get those responses. Comments?
Mayor, I'd like to make a couple of comments if I could.
Okay.
Just to be clear with the public, we are not the owners of this property, and we are not the developers of this property. This property is privately owned, and it's not for us to say we're going to make this a park or anything else unless we buy the property and then develop it ourselves. This property is developable, as is all property. Everybody that owns property within the city has the right to develop it in certain respects without coming to city council. And most development and building and everything else goes on without coming to city council. The only reason this is before us is because there is a zone change requested. And for the property owner and developer to put what they want to on this property, we would need to change the zone. For me, my one voice in the matter is, if you're coming to city council to ask us to change the zoning, it's got to be something special. There are places where you can build whatever you want to build by building it in the appropriate zone. If we're going to change the zoning, this has got to be something special that we couldn't refuse because we'd be so happy to have it in the city. And for this particular development, I just don't see that wow factor or anything special enough to change the zoning. That doesn't mean that I'm deciding what will be built there in the future. And it doesn't mean I'm deciding any future zone change today. We're only looking at this application today. That concludes my comments, Mayor.
Thank you. And I have to say thank you because you eloquently stated what I wanted to state. So thank you for going ahead of me. I don't have to say it. And I wouldn't have said it as well. Any other comments?
I have a comment. I agree with Councilmember Bueller. And, for the reasons of we're running out of residential property, we created a new zone, the RE zone, to take our larger pieces of agricultural property and leave them for homes. Between Hunter High, And the railroad, it's only homes butting right up onto 56th. I think continuing that to the tracks makes sense. I don't think this development is right for this property myself. That's it.
Any other comments?
Wanted to add that I'm along that same vein. In the last planning meeting, and in reviewing the zoning meeting, etc. I didn't have a lot to say actually, and I did that on purpose until I had the chance to knock a few doors and talk to some folks there on 4510 in Cape Vista. And I think the comments that were submitted previously and those that were voiced tonight as well actually were recurrent with everyone that I spoke with there as well. And the points that my colleagues on the council have already brought up, I fully agree with as well. And it's a little uncomfortable because it's not a bad proposal necessarily. And like Councilman Bueller mentioned, it's not our land necessarily, but I still feel like a better proposal. I would be looking for a more special proposal, to use Councilman Bueller's word as well.
Any others? I think I would add a general comment. Oh, was someone going to speak? Lars?
I'm ready to make a motion that we deny ordinance 20-45 for the reasons that have all been stated, especially for the comments that we received from the residents. I appreciate what they had to say, and I'm in agreement with the other council members who have spoken.
Second for that.
The motion is properly before us. I think I'll speak generally in favor of that. But I would say that our responsibility is not to a developer or a property owner, but rather to the well-being of our city overall. Sometimes that overall situation does not agree with the nearby neighbors, but it's still right for our city as a whole. But in this case, there are some issues that seem to be pretty significant with this particular proposal. And so with that, if I'll listen for any further comments, if not, hearing no further comments, we will turn to our city recorder for the roll call vote.
Councilman Fitty-Simonu?
Aye.
Councilwoman Lang?
Yes.
Councilman Bueller?
Aye.
Councilman Hune?
Aye.
Councilman Christensen?
Yes.
Councilman Nordfelt?
Yes.
And Mayor Bigelow?
Aye.
Motion for denial passes unanimously.
Okay. Thank you. That leaves the other item on there, Resolution 20-165. That's on our agenda, but since the zoning change was not done, the development agreement is meaningless. So probably either ought to, I guess we could deny it or say we're not going to address it, but a motion would be made.
I would move that we deny Resolution 20-165.
Second.
Properly before us, hearing no further comments, to our city recorder for the vote.
Councilman Nordfelt?
Yes.
Councilman Christensen?
Yes.
Councilman Hune?
Aye.
Councilman Bueller?
Aye.
Councilwoman Lang?
Yes.
Councilman Fitty-Simonu?
Aye.
And Mayor Bigelow?
Aye.
Motion for denial passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate those who have come and participated. And we do not have a need for a closed session after this. So that completes our agenda for the night. Any final comments, or certainly encourage people to stay safe, to vote for the candidate of your choice, and on this ballot for the issues of your choice. Then with that,
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn. Without objection, we will stand adjourned. Hearing no objections, we are adjourned. Thank you all. Have a good evening.